My name is Mason Mitchell, and at 28, I've built a pretty good life for myself as a software engineer in Seattle. This morning, I opened my email to find something that made my heart stop, a message from my sister, someone I haven't spoken to in almost a decade. My entire family cut me out of their lives when my cousin Veronica falsely accused me of sexual assault. Now, after 10 years of silence, they want to talk. I'm not sure if I'm ready to reopen those wounds or if some doors should stay closed forever. If you've ever been betrayed by those who were supposed to love you unconditionally, I think you'll understand. I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if my story resonates with you, please hit like and subscribe. Sometimes knowing others have survived family trauma is the support we all need. I grew up in what I thought was a close-knit family in suburban Chicago. My parents, Warren and Rosemary Mitchell, raised my younger sister Haley and me in a modest 4-bedroom house with a big backyard where all our extended family would gather for holidays and summer barbecues. My dad worked as an accountant, and my mom taught second grade at the local elementary school. They were strict but loving parents who emphasized education, honesty, and family loyalty above all else. Among our extended family, I was particularly close to my Uncle Dale and Aunt Pamela, my father's brother and his wife. They lived just 20 minutes away and had 2 children, my cousins Veronica and Tyler. Veronica was 2 years younger than me, and we grew up almost like siblings due to how often our families got together. Some of my fondest childhood memories involve summer days spent at my uncle's pool, where Veronica and I would have diving competitions and underwater tea parties. I remember how she'd always beg me to throw her higher into the water, squealing with delight when I'd launch her up to make the biggest splash possible. Those were simple, innocent times. Our family prided itself on our tight bonds. Every Sunday, we'd rotate houses for dinner, with each family taking turns hosting. Thanksgiving meant my grandmother's special stuffing recipe and Uncle Dale's deep-fried turkey. Christmas Eve was always at our house, with my mom's famous hot chocolate and my dad reading The Night Before Christmas to all the kids, even after we'd grown too old for it. In this family environment, I developed into what everyone called the responsible one. I got straight A's in school, was captain of the debate team, and volunteered at the local animal shelter. My parents would often brag about my accomplishments to anyone who would listen, and while it sometimes embarrassed me, I secretly enjoyed making them proud. Veronica, on the other hand, was always more free-spirited. She had a natural artistic talent, and could draw or paint anything. I remember spending hours watching her sketch, amazed at how she could transform a blank page into something beautiful. When she struggled with math or science, I'd help her with homework, patiently explaining concepts until that light bulb moment when understanding would dawn on her face. "You explain it better than my teachers, Mason," she'd say, and I'd feel that surge of pride at being her trusted mentor. As we entered our teen years, though, things began to change. Around the time Veronica turned 13, she started pulling away from the family. She dyed her hair black, started wearing heavy eyeliner, and became increasingly argumentative with her parents. At family gatherings, she'd isolate herself, texting friends or listening to music with her headphones on instead of participating in our usual activities. I remember one Thanksgiving when she refused to sit at the table with everyone else, causing a huge argument between her and Aunt Pamela. Uncle Dale finally convinced her to join us, but she sat silently, picking at her food and rolling her eyes whenever anyone tried to engage her in conversation. "Just a phase," my mother whispered to Aunt Pamela. "All teenagers go through it." But it seemed more than just typical teenage rebellion. Veronica began seeking attention in increasingly dramatic ways, from faking illness to get out of school to starting rumors about classmates. Once, she even called the police claiming there was an intruder in their house when she was home alone, only to admit later she had been scared by a noise that was just the neighbor's cat. Despite her changing behavior, I still tried to maintain our close relationship. When I was accepted to Northwestern University on a partial scholarship, Veronica was one of the first people I told. She seemed genuinely happy for me, giving me a rare authentic smile and a tight hug. "You deserve it, Mason," she said. You've always been the smart one. My parents threw a small party to celebrate my acceptance, inviting the extended family over for cake and champagne. My father made a toast that still rings in my memory. To Mason, who has never given us a moment of worry or disappointment. Son, you make us proud every day. Everyone raised their glasses, and I felt on top of the world. Everyone except Veronica, who slipped out early, claiming she had a headache. I didn't think much of it at the time, but looking back, I wonder if that was the moment something shifted in our relationship, if my achievements somehow made her feel inadequate or overlooked in comparison. As my high school graduation approached, I was fully focused on the future, on college classes and dorm life and all the possibilities that lay ahead. I had no idea that my life was about to be derailed in the most devastating way possible, or that the family I loved so dearly would soon turn their backs on me completely. I started Northwestern University with all the excitement and nervousness of any college freshman. My dorm room was small but felt like freedom after sharing a bathroom with my sister for years. My roommate Carl was a pre-med student from California who introduced me to surfing during spring break. I declared a computer science major after acing my first programming class, discovering I had both a talent and passion for coding. Those first months at college were everything I'd hoped for: challenging classes, new friends, and the exhilarating sense that I was building the foundation for my future. I called home every Sunday to update my parents, and they seemed genuinely interested in every detail of my new life. Occasionally, I'd asked about Veronica, and my mom would sigh and say something vague about her. Still going through a difficult phase. After completing my freshman year with a 3.8 GPA, I returned home for summer break. My parents had planned a big family reunion for the 4th of July weekend, a tradition we'd kept since before I was born. Relatives would be coming from as far as Florida and California, including some I hadn't seen in years. Everyone's so excited to see you, my mother said as she prepared guest rooms. They all want to hear about Northwestern. The reunion was held at my parents' house since they had the largest backyard. I remember how perfect everything looked: red, white, and blue decorations hanging from trees, tables covered with checkered tablecloths, the smell of my dad's famous barbecue filling the air. Nearly 50 people showed up, from my 90-year-old great-grandmother to my cousin's newborn baby. When Veronica arrived with Uncle Dale and Aunt Pamela, I barely recognized her. In the months I'd been away, she'd lost weight, dyed her hair platinum blonde, and gotten a nose piercing. She was wearing a sundress that seemed too mature for her 17 years, and she had this forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hey, college boy," she said when I greeted her, her voice carrying an edge I couldn't quite identify. "Slumming it with the family this weekend?" "Just for the weekend," I laughed, trying to match her light tone. "It's good to see you, Veronica. You look different." She touched her nose ring self-consciously. "Good different or bad different?" "Just different," I said diplomatically. "How's school going?" She shrugged. "Whatever. Not all of us are geniuses." Before I could respond, my aunt pulled her away to help with the food, and I got caught up greeting other relatives. Throughout the day, I noticed Veronica watching me from across the yard, especially when I was talking to our relatives about college. Whenever I'd catch her eye, she'd quickly look away or pretend to be engrossed in conversation with someone else. As evening approached and people gathered around the bonfire my dad had built, I found Veronica sitting alone on the porch steps, staring at her phone. I sat down beside her, offering her a can of soda. "Not in a social mood?" I asked. She took the soda without looking up. "Just tired of hearing about how amazing you are." I was taken aback by her bitterness. "Hey, I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. You don't have to try," she muttered. "It just happens naturally when everyone compares me to you." "No one's comparing us," I said, though I knew that wasn't entirely true. I'd overheard my aunt asking Veronica earlier why she couldn't be more focused like me. "Whatever," she said again, her favorite dismissal. Then, unexpectedly, her tone softened. "I'm having trouble at school." Mom and Dad are talking about sending me to therapy. That might not be a bad idea, I said carefully. Therapy helped my roommate deal with his anxiety. Do you think I'm crazy? She asked, her voice small. No, of course not. I think you're going through something difficult, and talking to someone might help. She was quiet for a moment, then said, I miss how things used to be. When we were kids. Me too, I admitted. We should hang out sometime this summer, just the two of us. Like old times. She nodded but didn't respond. After a few more minutes of awkward silence, I checked my watch and stood up. I promised some high school friends I'd meet them for a late movie. I explained. Are you going to be okay? I'm fine, she said, her walls visibly going back up. Go have fun with your friends. I hesitated, feeling like I should say something more, but she had already returned her attention to her phone. So I said goodbye, told my parents I was heading out, and left the reunion early. It was around 9:30 p.m. when I left, a detail that would become crucially important later. I met my friends at the local theater, watched some forgettable action movie, and then went for burgers afterward. We talked and laughed until nearly 1 a.m., catching up on all we'd missed while I was away at college. I was with them the entire time, in public places with dozens of witnesses, another detail that would matter soon. The next morning, I was awakened by my phone ringing repeatedly. It was my mother, and when I answered, her voice was shaking so badly I could barely understand her. You need to come home right now, she said. Something terrible has happened. Alarmed, I asked what was wrong, if someone was hurt. There was a long pause before she said, It's about Veronica. She's saying you did something to her last night. My stomach dropped. What? What is she saying? Just come home, Mason. Now. I drove home in a state of confused panic, my mind racing to understand what could possibly be happening. When I arrived, I found my parents sitting in the living room, my father's face a mask of fury, my mother crying silently. What's going on? I asked, still standing in the doorway. My father could barely look at me as he spoke. Veronica told her parents that you sexually assaulted her last night during the reunion. She says you followed her to the guest bathroom upstairs, pushed your way in, and attacked her. The accusation was so absurd, so completely untrue, that for a moment I thought it must be some kind of sick joke. But one look at my parents' faces told me this was deadly serious. That's insane, I said, my voice rising in disbelief. I wasn't even here. I left at 9:30 to meet Ryan and Josh at the movies. You saw me leave, Mom. Veronica says it happened before you left, my father said flatly. Around 9 p.m. I was outside with everyone else at 9 p.m. The bonfire had just started. There were 50 people here who can confirm that. But even as I protested, I could see the doubt in my father's eyes, not doubt about Veronica's story, but doubt about my denial. My own father didn't believe me. Why would she lie about something like this? My mother asked through tears. I don't know. But she is lying. You have to believe me. I would never do something like that. Never. The conversation spiraled from there. My parents revealed that Uncle Dale had already called the police, who wanted to question me. Veronica was apparently at the hospital having a rape kit done. The family reunion had turned into a nightmare, with relatives taking sides and rumors flying. And in that moment, standing in my childhood home being accused of something so horrific, I realized that everything I thought I knew about my family and my place in it was about to be destroyed. Get your things and get out of this house, my father said, his voice eerily calm after 2 hours of heated arguing. I won't have someone like you under my roof. Someone like me? I repeated, stunned. Dad, I'm your son. You've known me my entire life. How can you possibly believe I would do something like this? The Mason I thought I knew wouldn't, he said, not meeting my eyes. But clearly I didn't know you as well as I thought. My mother sat silently on the couch, tissues crumpled in her hand, not intervening. Not defending me. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain I'd ever experienced. "Mom?" I pleaded. "You can't believe this." She finally looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "I don't know what to believe anymore, Mason. But Veronica is devastated. She's at the hospital right now, being examined. Why would she put herself through that if nothing happened? I don't know why she's doing this," I said, desperation creeping into my voice. "But I was with Ryan and Josh at the movies when she claims this happened. Call them. Ask them. Your uncle says she has bruises," my father countered. "And she described in detail how you cornered her in the bathroom. Bruises from what? I never touched her. This is insane." But it was like talking to strangers. The parents who had always believed in me, who had proudly toasted my achievements just months before, now looked at me like I was a monster. My father pointed toward the stairs. "Pack what you need and go. The police will contact you for questioning." I stood frozen, unable to process that this was really happening. "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not our concern right now," my father said coldly. "Veronica is our concern." I trudged upstairs in a daze, grabbing clothes and toiletries and shoving them into a duffel bag. As I passed my sister Haley's room, her door opened slightly, and she peered out at me. "I want to believe you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But Veronica was crying so hard when she called. She could barely speak." "She's lying, Haley," I said, fighting back tears of my own. "I swear to you." Haley looked torn, fidgeting with her bracelet the way she did when anxious. "Why would she make something like this up?" "I don't know. Maybe she's having some kind of breakdown. Maybe she needs attention. I just know I didn't do what she's claiming." Haley stepped back into her room. "I need time to think about all this." But time was something none of us would have. Within hours, the allegation had spread through our entire extended family like wildfire. I tried calling my Uncle Dale to defend myself, but he hung up as soon as he heard my voice. Aunt Pamela sent a text calling me a predator who had betrayed their trust. Cousins I'd grown up with blocked me on social media. It was as if overnight, I had become a pariah. 2 days later, I sat in a sterile interview room at the police station, answering the same questions over and over. Yes, I was at the family reunion. No, I never followed Veronica to any bathroom. Yes, I left around 9:30 p.m. to meet friends. No, I was never alone with her except for our brief conversation on the porch steps. The detective's expression gave nothing away as he took notes. "We'll be verifying your alibi with your friends and the movie theater," he said. "In the meantime, do not attempt to contact Veronica or her family." "What about my own family?" I asked. "My parents kicked me out. I'm staying in a motel I can barely afford." He shrugged, unmoved by my situation. "That's a family matter, not a legal one. Unless charges are filed, we can't tell you who you can or can't contact." But every attempt I made to reach my parents was rebuffed. My mother would answer the phone only to hang up as soon as she heard my voice. My father sent a terse email saying not to call anymore. Even Haley, who had initially seemed uncertain, was now ignoring my texts and calls. I was completely alone, cut off from everyone I loved, living in a cheap motel room while trying to process the nightmare my life had become. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. When I did manage to drift off, I'd wake up in a cold sweat, my heart racing with anxiety. The police investigation dragged on for weeks. They interviewed my friends, who confirmed I was with them at the time Veronica claimed the assault happened. They obtained security footage from the movie theater showing me buying tickets. The rape kit came back with no physical evidence. Eventually, the detective called to inform me they wouldn't be filing charges due to lack of evidence and the conflicting timeline. But he added, "This doesn't mean we don't believe the victim. It just means we don't have enough to prosecute." I should have felt relieved, but I didn't. The damage was already done. My family had chosen to believe Veronica without question, without evidence, without even giving me the chance to properly defend myself. They had thrown me away like I meant nothing. With nowhere else to go, I found a tiny studio apartment I could just afford with what was left in my savings account. It was in a rundown building with paper-thin walls and unreliable heating, but it was all I could manage. I had to decide whether to return to Northwestern for my sophomore year or try to find a job, knowing my savings wouldn't last long. The depression that settled over me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. There were days I couldn't get out of bed, days when the simple act of showering seemed like an insurmountable task. I lost 20 pounds because I couldn't summon the energy to cook or even order takeout. The thought of ending it all crossed my mind more than once. In my darkest moments, it seemed like the only way to escape the pain and humiliation. What kept me going, ultimately, was anger. Anger at Veronica for her lie. Anger at my family for their betrayal. Anger at a world that was so quick to believe the worst about me without evidence. That anger became a lifeline, something to cling to when despair threatened to pull me under. I decided to return to Northwestern, throwing myself into my studies with a single-minded intensity that left no room for anything else. I avoided social events, kept to myself, and changed my phone number to stop the occasional harassing messages from extended family members who'd heard distorted versions of what happened. My grades actually improved, though my mental health continued to deteriorate. By Christmas break, I had nowhere to go. The thought of spending the holidays alone in my empty apartment was unbearable, but it was my new reality. I remember sitting on my threadbare couch on Christmas Eve, eating ramen noodles and watching the snow fall outside my window, wondering how my life had imploded so completely in just 6 months. The family that had once been my foundation, my safe harbor, had abandoned me based on a lie. And I had no idea how to begin rebuilding from such complete devastation. During my second semester at Northwestern, I met Dennis Howard in an advanced programming class. We were paired for a project, and unlike most people who sensed my standoffish demeanor and kept their distance, Dennis was persistently friendly. He invited me to study groups, saved me a seat in lectures, and generally refused to be deterred by my attempts to isolate myself. "You look like you could use a friend," he said bluntly one day after class. "And I'm pretty hard to get rid of." Something about his straightforward approach broke through my defenses. Over late-night coding sessions and coffee-fueled debugging marathons, I gradually opened up to him about what had happened with my family. I expected judgment or doubt. I'd become accustomed to it. But instead, Dennis listened thoughtfully and then said something that changed everything for me. "I believe you," he said simply. "And I'm sorry that happened to you." Those words, so simple yet so powerful coming after months of being disbelieved and discarded, brought me to tears right there in the university library. Dennis pretended not to notice, giving me a moment to compose myself, then suggested we get pizza. It was the first genuine act of friendship I'd experienced since the accusation, and it marked the beginning of my healing. Dennis introduced me to his friend group, none of whom knew my history or treated me like I had something to hide. For the first time in months, I found myself laughing again, remembering what it felt like to be just a normal college student without a dark cloud hanging over my head. Around this time, I also started seeing Dr. Sullivan, a therapist recommended by the university's counseling center. Our first few sessions were difficult. I was resistant, still angry, still raw with betrayal. "Your family's response says more about them than it does about you, Dr. Sullivan told me during one particularly emotional session. "They failed you, Mason. Not the other way around." That perspective shift was crucial. I'd been carrying so much shame, as if I had done something to deserve what happened. Dr. Sullivan helped me see that the failure of character wasn't mine. It belonged to those who had turned their backs on me without evidence, without due process, without the benefit of the doubt that family should provide. As my mental health slowly improved, I made a decision that would further change the course of my life. I applied for a transfer to Stanford University in California, as far from Chicago and my old life as I could reasonably get. When I received my acceptance letter, it felt like a second chance, an opportunity to reinvent myself somewhere no one knew my story. Before leaving Northwestern, I had coffee with Dr. Sullivan one last time. She gave me a referral to a colleague in Palo Alto and some parting advice. "The hardest part of healing from betrayal," she said, "is learning to trust again. Don't close yourself off to that possibility, Mason. Not everyone will hurt you the way your family did." California represented a fresh start. I arrived in Palo Alto with 2 suitcases and a determination to build something new from the ashes of my old life. My roommate at Stanford was Luis Garcia, a mechanical engineering major from Texas with an easy laugh and a talent for making authentic Mexican food that he generously shared. I was more open with Luis than I had been with anyone except Dennis, telling him about my situation early on so he wouldn't be blindsided if my past ever caught up with me. His response was refreshingly straightforward. "That's messed up, man," he said. "But hey, you're here now, and that's what matters." Luis became my first friend in my new life, introducing me to his study group and including me in weekend trips to San Francisco. Through him, I met other students who eventually became my chosen family, people who accepted me for who I was now, not who my biological family had decided I was based on a lie. My focus on academics never wavered. If anything, the drive to succeed became even stronger, as if proving my worth through achievement could somehow validate what my family should have known instinctively, that I was a good person who deserved to be believed. I graduated with honors, my degree in computer science opening doors to job opportunities in Silicon Valley's booming tech scene. My first serious relationship in California was with Candace Wells, a graphic designer I met through a mutual friend. Our connection was immediate and intense, but I was terrified of letting her get too close. The fear of being betrayed again, of being vulnerable only to be hurt, was almost paralyzing. On our 5th date, sitting on a blanket at a beachside concert, Candace sensed my hesitation. "You're holding something back," she said, her directness reminiscent of Dennis. "I like you, Mason, but I need to know if there's a reason you keep me at arm's length." That night, I told her everything, about Veronica's accusation, my family's rejection, the police investigation, and the lonely path I'd walked since. I expected her to make an excuse to leave, to decide I was too complicated, too damaged. Instead, she listened without interrupting, her eyes never leaving mine, and when I finished, she took my hand. "Thank you for trusting me with that," she said. "It can't have been easy to tell me. Are you sure you want to get involved with someone with that kind of baggage?" I asked, bracing for rejection. "Everyone has baggage, Mason. What matters is how you carry it. And from what I can see, you've carried yours with dignity and resilience." Candace became my rock, my safe harbor in a way my biological family had failed to be. With her encouragement, I continued therapy, gradually working through the trauma and trust issues that still affected me. We moved in together after a year of dating, creating a home filled with warmth and acceptance, things I had once taken for granted but now recognized as the precious gifts they were. My career flourished as I channeled my energy into work. I started at a mid-sized tech company, quickly earning promotions through a combination of technical skill and the intense work ethic I'd developed as a coping mechanism. When a major tech company in Seattle recruited me for a senior developer position with nearly double my current salary, Candace supported the move without hesitation. "We'll build our life wherever makes sense for us," she said. "Seattle's supposed to be beautiful." We relocated to the Pacific Northwest, buying a small but modern condo with a view of Puget Sound. From the outside, my life looked perfect: successful career, loving relationship, financial stability. But underneath, the wounds remained. I still had nightmares where I'd wake up gasping for breath, convinced I was back in that motel room, alone and discarded. Certain triggers: a family reunion scene in a movie, a news story about false accusations, even the smell of barbecue that reminded me of that fateful 4th of July, could send me into an anxiety spiral that took days to recover from. I had accepted that some scars never fully heal. They just become part of who you are. I had made peace with the fact that my biological family was no longer part of my life, and likely never would be again. I had Dennis, who had relocated to San Diego but still called regularly. I had Luis, who visited whenever business brought him to Seattle. I had Candace, who loved me completely, history and all. It wasn't the life I had envisioned for myself back when I was that achievement-oriented kid from Chicago with the proud parents and the close-knit extended family. But it was a good life, one I had built from nothing, one I had earned through perseverance and resilience. And then, after nearly 10 years of silence, the email from my sister appeared in my inbox, threatening to upend everything once again. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing code for a project launch. The subject line read simply, "Mason, please read this." But it was the sender that made my heart skip. Haley Mitchell, my sister who hadn't spoken to me in almost a decade. I stared at the notification on my phone, my hands suddenly clammy, my breath shallow. Part of me wanted to delete it immediately, to protect the life and stability I'd worked so hard to build. But a deeper part, the part that still occasionally dreamed of reconciliation despite everything, wouldn't let me. I closed my office door, sat down heavily in my chair, and opened the email. "Mason," it began. "I don't know if you'll read this or if you even use this email address anymore, but I hope you do. I need to tell you something important." Veronica confessed. She lied about what happened that night. All of it. She's been in therapy for several years now, and apparently, she finally told her therapist the truth, who encouraged her to tell the family. She was going through severe mental health issues back then and wanted attention. She says she never expected it to go as far as it did, but then she was too afraid and ashamed to take it back. I know this doesn't undo what happened to you, what we all did to you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just thought you deserved to know the truth. If you're willing to talk, my number is still the same. Haley. I read the email 3 times, the words blurring through tears of rage and vindication. The panic attack hit me like a freight train, chest constricting, room spinning, sweat breaking out across my forehead. I had to put my head between my knees, forcing myself to take slow, deep breaths the way Dr. Thompson, my therapist in Seattle, had taught me. When Candace came home that evening, she found me still sitting in the same position, the email open on my laptop. "Mason? What's wrong?" she asked, alarmed by my pallor. Wordlessly, I turned the screen toward her. She read quickly, her expression shifting from concern to shock to quiet anger. "Oh my God!" she whispered. "After all this time. I don't know what to do with this," I admitted, my voice hoarse. Candace sat on the arm of my chair, wrapping me in a protective embrace. "You don't have to do anything right now. Give yourself time to process." She says Veronica lied? That she made it all up? My voice broke. 10 years of my life, Candace. 10 years of being treated like a criminal by my own family, of having to rebuild everything from scratch, of therapy and nightmares and panic attacks, all because of a lie. "I know," she said softly, stroking my hair. "I know. What am I supposed to do now? Call my sister like nothing happened? Pretend it's all okay?" "No one expects you to pretend anything," Candace assured me. "But maybe hearing what she has to say might give you some closure." The next few days passed in a blur of conflicting emotions. Rage at Veronica for the lie that had derailed my life. Vindication that finally, the truth had come out. Bitter satisfaction that my family now knew they had been wrong. Grief for all the years lost, all the relationships destroyed. And underneath it all, a small, stubborn flicker of hope that perhaps some healing was possible. More emails arrived, from my mother, my father, even my Uncle Dale. Each expressed shock at Veronica's confession, regret for how they had treated me, pleas for a chance to explain. I read them all but responded to none, unsure what I wanted or what response I could possibly give that wouldn't unleash a decade of bottled rage and hurt. Candace, ever my anchor, gave me space but stayed close. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you," she assured me. "If you want to talk to them, I'll support that. If you want to tell them all to go to hell, I'll support that too." After a week of sleepless nights and conversations with Dr. Thompson, I decided to respond to Haley's email with a simple message. "I'll call you tomorrow at 7 p.m. your time." The phone call with my sister was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Her voice, so familiar yet strange after all these years, broke immediately upon answering. "Mason," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I remained silent, letting her cry, surprised by my own emotional numbness. When she collected herself, she told me everything: how Veronica had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder in her early 20s, how she'd spiraled into drug use and destructive relationships after high school, how the lie about me had apparently haunted her until she couldn't bear it anymore. "She told her therapist 3 months ago," Haley explained. "Then her therapist helped her tell her parents. Uncle Dale and Aunt Pamela were devastated. They came to Mom and Dad right away. We've all been trying to process it." 3 months? I repeated, the first words I'd spoken. "You've known for 3 months and you're just contacting me now?" Haley's voice was small. "We didn't know how to reach out. We were afraid you'd hate us. We are so ashamed, Mason." "As you should be," I said, surprising myself with the coldness in my voice. "Do you have any idea what the last 10 years have been like for me?" "No," she admitted. "We don't. That's why we're hoping you might be willing to talk to us. To tell us. If you want to. And if I don't want to? If I've finally built a life without any of you in it, and I'm not sure I want to change that, then we'll respect that," she said, though I could hear the hope draining from her voice. "We just wanted you to know the truth. You deserve that much, at least." I asked more questions, about what had happened to everyone in the years since, about how the false accusation had affected the family. Haley told me that our parents had nearly divorced from the stress, that Thanksgiving and Christmas gatherings had never been the same, that Veronica had become the family's new problem child, dropping out of college and moving between relatives' homes when she couldn't hold down a job or an apartment. "None of us came through this unscathed," she said. "Though I know that doesn't compare to what you went through." Before ending the call, I asked the question that had been burning in my mind since reading her email. "Why did you all believe her so quickly? Why didn't anyone believe me?" Haley was quiet for a long moment. "I've asked myself that same question 1,000 times since Veronica confessed. The only answer I have is that she was so convincing, so hysterical, so detailed in her accusation. And you were always so perfect, Mason." Maybe part of us wondered if there was another side to you we didn't know. "That's not a good enough reason to throw away your brother," I said, my voice breaking at last. "I know," she whispered. "I know." After the call with Haley, I agreed to a video call with my parents the following weekend. Candace sat beside me for moral support as the call connected, and I saw my parents' faces for the first time in nearly a decade. They had aged dramatically. My father's hair was completely gray, his face lined with new wrinkles. My mother looked smaller somehow, diminished. They both began crying as soon as they saw me, apologies tumbling out in incoherent streams. I let them talk, letting them express their regret, their shame, their explanations for why they had failed me so completely. My father, always the stoic one, broke down entirely. "I failed you as a father," he said, his voice ragged. "I should have believed my son. I will carry that shame to my grave." My mother could barely speak through her tears. "Can you ever forgive us, Mason? Can there ever be a way back from what we did?" I didn't offer easy forgiveness or emotional absolution. Instead, I told them plainly about the years of depression, the therapy, the struggle to trust anyone again. I told them about the nightmares that still plagued me, about the panic attacks triggered by reminders of that time. I wanted them to understand exactly what their betrayal had cost me. "I built a life without you," I concluded. "I had to. I have a career, a home, people who love me unconditionally, the way family is supposed to. I don't know if there's room in that life for people who threw me away so easily." They nodded, accepting my anger as their due. My father asked if I would consider meeting in person someday, perhaps with Veronica present so she could apologize directly. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," I admitted. "I need time to process all of this." "We understand," my mother said, though the hope in her eyes was painful to see. We'll wait as long as you need. We're just so grateful you were willing to talk to us at all. After the call ended, Candace held me as I finally broke down, releasing a decade of pent-up grief and rage and hurt. You did so well, she murmured. So well. Over the next few weeks, I spoke with Dr. Thompson about the possibility of meeting my family in person. We worked through the complex emotions the contact had stirred up, the anger that had never fully dissipated, the vindication that came too late, the lingering desire for the family connections I'd lost. Meeting them doesn't mean forgiving them, Dr. Thompson reminded me. And it doesn't mean letting them back into your life permanently. It can simply be a step in your own healing process. After much consideration, I agreed to an in-person meeting, but on my terms, neutral territory in Seattle, with Candace present, and including Veronica. If I was going to face my past, I wanted to face all of it at once. The arrangements were made, boundaries were set, and expectations were managed. In 3 weeks' time, I would come face to face with the people who had once been my world, and with the cousin whose lie had shattered that world completely. The days leading up to the meeting were filled with anxiety. I had nightmares 3 nights in a row, visions of my family laughing at me, telling me it was all a trick to hurt me again. I nearly canceled twice, but Candace and Dr. Thompson helped me work through the panic. You're in control this time, Candace reminded me. You set the terms. You can leave at any point. And I'll be right beside you. I took a week off work, unable to focus on coding when my mind was consumed with the impending confrontation. The night before the meeting, Candace and I sat on our balcony overlooking the Seattle skyline, talking through my fears and expectations. What do you hope to get out of tomorrow? She asked, her hand warm in mine. I considered the question carefully. Closure, I think. I need to look Veronica in the eye and hear her admit what she did. I need my parents to understand exactly what their choice cost me. I'm not looking for a Hollywood reconciliation. I just need the truth acknowledged, face to face. And if they want more? If they want to rebuild the relationship? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me says it's too late, that some bridges can't be rebuilt once they're burned. But another part. I don't know, Candace. They're still my family, despite everything. She squeezed my hand. You don't have to decide anything tomorrow. Just listen, say what you need to say, and then we'll figure out the rest one step at a time. The meeting was set for noon at a private dining room in an upscale Seattle restaurant. Candace and I arrived early, giving me time to collect myself in the neutral space. The room was elegant but understated, with large windows overlooking Elliott Bay. I chose a seat facing the door, needing to see them enter rather than having them approach from behind. My parents arrived first, hesitating in the doorway as if unsure of their welcome. My father looked even older in person, slightly stooped now where he had once stood tall and proud. My mother had dyed her hair to cover the gray, but nothing could hide the lines of worry etched into her face. Haley was with them, now a woman in her mid-30s rather than the college student I remembered. Mason, my mother whispered, taking a half-step forward before stopping herself, respecting the boundaries I'd set. I nodded stiffly. Mom. Dad. Haley. This is Candace, my partner. Candace offered a polite but reserved greeting as they took seats across from us. The awkward silence that followed was broken by the arrival of Uncle Dale, Aunt Pamela, and Veronica. My breath caught at the sight of my cousin. The rebellious teenager was now a thin, prematurely aged woman in her late 20s. Her once vibrant features were dulled, her movements nervous and jerky. She couldn't meet my eyes as she slipped into a chair at the far end of the table. A server brought water and took drink orders, the mundane interaction providing a momentary reprieve from the tension. When we were alone again, my father cleared his throat. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us, Mason, he began formally, as if addressing a business associate rather than his son. We know it couldn't have been an easy decision. It wasn't, I confirmed, my voice steadier than I expected. 10 years is a long time. Too long, my mother said, her eyes filling with tears. Far too long. I looked directly at Veronica, who was staring down at her trembling hands. I think we all know why we're here. Veronica has something she needs to say to me. Uncle Dale nudged his daughter gently. Go ahead, Veronica. Like we discussed. Veronica finally raised her gaze to meet mine, her eyes swimming with tears. I lied, she said, her voice barely audible. I lied about what happened at the reunion. You never touched me. You never did anything wrong. I made it all up. Despite having read this admission in emails, hearing it spoken aloud hit me with unexpected force. My hands clenched into fists under the table, and Candace placed her hand over mine, a silent gesture of support. Why? I asked, the single word containing a decade of pain. Veronica wiped at her tears. I was messed up back then. Depressed, angry, jealous of you and the attention you got. I wanted to hurt you, to make everyone see you weren't perfect. But it spiraled out of control so fast. Once I told my parents, and they called the police, I was too scared to take it back. I thought I'd go to jail for filing a false report, or that everyone would hate me. So instead, everyone hated me, I said flatly. Everyone believed I was capable of something so vile, without evidence, without even giving me a fair chance to defend myself. We failed you, my father admitted, his voice breaking. As parents, we should have at least considered the possibility that there was another explanation. We should have listened. Yes, you should have, I agreed, feeling a strange calm despite the emotional storm inside me. I was your son. I had never given you any reason to doubt my character. But you threw me away without a second thought. Not without a second thought, my mother protested weakly. We were confused, overwhelmed. I lived in a motel for weeks. I cut in. I had to find an apartment I could barely afford while trying to stay in college. I lost 20 pounds because I couldn't eat from stress. I considered ending my life because the pain of your betrayal was so complete. My blunt words hit their mark. My mother covered her mouth to stifle a sob, and my father seemed to age another decade before my eyes. When the police didn't file charges due to lack of evidence, did that make you question Veronica's story? Even for a moment? I asked. They exchanged guilty glances. We thought they just couldn't prove it, my father admitted. We convinced ourselves that didn't mean it didn't happen. Because it was easier than admitting you might have made a terrible mistake, I concluded. Haley spoke up for the first time. We were wrong, Mason. All of us. Catastrophically, unforgivably wrong. The conversation continued for hours, painful and raw but necessary. I learned how the accusation had affected them all. My parents' marriage nearly collapsing under the strain, Haley's own struggles with doubt, Veronica's downward spiral into addiction and mental health crises. It didn't justify what they had done, but it helped me understand the complex fallout of that single, devastating lie. I told them about my life in the years since, my transfer to Stanford, my career in software development, my relationship with Candace. I didn't sugarcoat the psychological impact their abandonment had on me, the years of therapy, the trust issues I still battled. They needed to hear it all, to understand the full consequences of their actions. As the meeting drew to a close, my father asked the question they had all been avoiding. Where do we go from here, Mason? Is there any chance we could be part of your life again, in whatever capacity you're comfortable with? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision. I honestly don't know. This isn't something I can decide today. I need time to process everything we've discussed. Of course, my mother said quickly. We understand. I'm not saying no, I clarified. But I'm not saying yes either. If we move forward, it has to be slowly, with clear boundaries. And with the understanding that things can never go back to the way they were before. Too much has happened. They nodded, accepting these terms as more than they had dared hope for. As we prepared to leave, Veronica approached me hesitantly. I know sorry isn't enough, she said, her voice steadier now. Nothing I can say will make up for what I did to you, But I am getting help now, real help. And part of my recovery is making amends where I can, even knowing some damage can't be undone. I looked at my cousin, this broken woman who had caused me so much pain, and found that my rage had dulled to a tired sadness. I hope you find peace, Veronica, I said finally. For both our sakes. As Candace and I walked back to our car, she squeezed my hand. How are you feeling? I exhaled slowly. Drained. But also, lighter somehow. Like I'd been carrying this weight for so long that I forgot what it felt like not to have it. Are you going to let them back into your life? She asked. Maybe. On my terms, with very clear boundaries. But maybe. The decision wasn't made that day, or even that month. It would take time, careful consideration, and many more conversations with Dr. Thompson. But for the first time in a decade, the possibility existed, not of erasing the past, but perhaps of building something new from its painful lessons. 6 months after that first meeting in Seattle, I found myself sitting in a different restaurant, this time in Chicago. It was my first visit back to my hometown since leaving for California all those years ago. The city felt both familiar and foreign, like a recurring dream that's not quite right. Candace had come with me, of course. Her unwavering support through this entire process had only deepened my love and appreciation for her. We'd decided to make a vacation of it, 3 days in Chicago, visiting some of my old haunts and meeting my family in carefully planned, time-limited interactions. This particular dinner was with my parents and Haley. We'd been in contact regularly over the past months, weekly video calls that had gradually evolved from awkward and stilted to something approaching comfortable. Not the easy familiarity of before, but a new dynamic that acknowledged the painful history between us. The city's changed so much, I commented as we waited for our food. I barely recognized the lakefront. They've done a lot of development in the past few years. My father agreed, seizing on the neutral topic. Your old high school was completely renovated too. Small talk could only carry us so far, though. Eventually, the conversation turned to more significant matters. We've been seeing a family therapist, my mother shared. All of us, including Dale and Pamela. It's helping us understand how we failed you, and how we can do better if you decide to give us another chance. That's good to hear, I said sincerely. The fact that they were putting in the work, not just making empty promises, mattered to me. How are things with Candace? Haley asked. You two seem really good together. Candace smiled, her hand finding mine under the table. We are. Actually, we have some news. We're engaged. The announcement sparked genuine excitement, the most natural reaction I'd seen from my family since our reunion. My mother's eyes filled with happy tears, and my father reached across the table to shake my hand warmly. That's wonderful news, he said. Truly wonderful. There was a brief, uncomfortable moment when my mother asked, Will we be invited to the wedding? Her voice was tentative, acknowledging that such inclusion wasn't a given. We're still planning, I said carefully. It will be small, and we're taking things one step at a time. But yes, if things continue to progress positively between us, we'd like you to be there. The relief and joy on their faces was palpable. It wasn't forgiveness, not completely, but it was a step toward a new kind of relationship. The next day, Candace and I met with Veronica alone. It was the first time I'd spoken with her one-on-one since the accusation. We met at a quiet coffee shop, away from the watchful eyes of the rest of the family. Veronica looked better than she had at our first meeting in Seattle. She'd gained some healthy weight, and her eyes were clearer. I'm 8 months sober, she told us, a quiet pride in her voice. And I've been stable on my medication for almost a year now. That's great, I said and meant it. Despite everything, I didn't wish her ill. I've been thinking a lot about what I can do, besides just apologizing, she continued. My therapist suggested that maybe there's some way I could make amends that's more concrete. What did you have in mind? Candace asked when I remained silent. I want to record a video statement, Veronica said. detailing exactly what happened, admitting that I lied, and fully exonerating Mason. You could share it with anyone who might still have doubts or who knew about the accusation back then. It won't undo the damage, but it might help set the record straight. The offer surprised me. It was more than I'd expected and showed a level of accountability I hadn't been sure Veronica was capable of. I'd appreciate that, I said finally. Thank you. We talked for another hour, and I found myself able to ask questions I'd been carrying for years. Not just about the accusation, but about her life since then, her struggles with mental health, her path to recovery. Understanding didn't erase the harm she'd caused, but it helped me see her as a complex, flawed human being rather than the monster my memory had sometimes painted her to be. As our time in Chicago drew to a close, I had one final meeting, with Uncle Dale and Aunt Pamela at their home. The house was largely the same as I remembered, though the backyard pool where Veronica and I had played as children had been filled in and replaced with a garden. Too much maintenance as we got older, Uncle Dale explained when he saw me looking out at the transformed space. The conversation was more difficult than those with my immediate family. My uncle had been the one to call the police, the most vocal in condemning me. His apology was gruff but sincere. I was protecting my daughter, he said. Or at least I thought I was. I never stopped to consider what it would do to you if she wasn't telling the truth. That's on me, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Aunt Pamela was more emotional, breaking down several times as she recalled the family gatherings I'd missed, the milestones that had passed without me. We lost so much, she said through tears. All of us. The family has never been the same. As we prepared to leave, Uncle Dale pulled me aside. I know we can't go back to how things were, he said. But I hope someday you can find it in your heart to forgive us. Not for our sake, but for yours. You deserve to be free of this burden. His words stayed with me on the flight back to Seattle. Was forgiveness possible after such profound betrayal? And was it something I wanted to offer, or was the boundary of limited contact enough? In the months that followed, Candace and I moved forward with our wedding plans. We chose a date, booked a venue on the Washington coast, and began the process of building our guest list. Including my family felt both right and terrifying, a concrete step toward reintegration that couldn't be easily undone. Dr. Thompson helped me navigate these complex emotions. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing, she reminded me. It means releasing the power the betrayal has over you. It's something you do for yourself, not for them. Veronica kept her promise about the video statement. She recorded it with her therapist present, detailing her mental state at the time, the lies she had told, and the devastating consequences it had for me and the entire family. She took full responsibility, making it clear that I had done nothing wrong. Having that record, that vindication, helped heal something in me that I hadn't realized was still raw. Our wedding day arrived on a clear September afternoon. Candace was radiant in a simple white dress that took my breath away. My parents and sister sat in the front row, alongside the friends who had been my support system when my family was absent: Dennis, Luis, colleagues from work who had become close friends over the years. Veronica had not been invited, that boundary remained firm. But her parents were there, sitting quietly in the back, respectful of their tenuous position in my life. As Candace and I exchanged vows promising to stand by each other through whatever life brought our way, I reflected on the journey that had led me to this moment. The false accusation that had shattered my world. The years of isolation and rebuilding. The unexpected contact that had reopened old wounds but also offered a chance for healing. The slow, careful process of allowing my family back into my life, not as they had been before, but in a new configuration that acknowledged both the pain of the past and the possibility of the future. After the ceremony, my father approached me, his expression solemn. "I know today isn't about us," he said, "but I want you to know how grateful I am to be here, to witness your happiness after everything. You've built an extraordinary life, Mason. I'm so proud of the man you've become, despite everything we put you through." "Thank you," I said, finding that I meant it. It means a lot that you're here. We embraced briefly, not the carefree hug of the past, but something real nonetheless. A connection broken and mended, imperfectly but genuinely. Later that evening, as Candace and I danced under strings of lights, she asked me, "Are you happy with how things have worked out with your family?" I considered the question carefully. "I'm at peace with it," I said finally. "I don't think our relationship will ever be what it once was. Too much happened, too much trust was broken. But we're building something new, something that honors the truth of our history while allowing for the possibility of a different future." "And Veronica?" she asked. "That's more complicated," I admitted. "I don't hate her anymore. I understand her better now, the mental health issues, the cry for attention that spiraled out of control. But some bridges can't be rebuilt. I wish her well in her recovery, but I don't see her being part of my life." Candace nodded, understanding as always. "Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation." "Exactly. I can release the anger without pretending the betrayal never happened." As our first dance ended, I looked around at the gathering. My chosen family of friends mingled with my biological family, two worlds that had once seemed irreconcilable now cautiously coexisting. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and there was beauty in that reality. The truth had eventually emerged, as it often does. The lie that had derailed my life had finally been acknowledged and corrected. The family that had failed me had accepted responsibility and was working to earn back a place in my life. And I had discovered my own resilience, the strength to rebuild, to love again, to allow for the possibility of healing without compromising my self-respect. That night, surrounded by love both old and new, I felt a sense of closure that had eluded me for so long. Not an ending, but a transition to a new chapter, one written on my terms, with clear boundaries and earned trust. Life's most painful experiences often lead to the greatest growth. The false accusation that once defined me had become just one part of my story, a crucial chapter, but not the conclusion. What mattered now was how I chose to write the rest of the narrative. If you've ever been falsely accused of something terrible, or been betrayed by those closest to you, I hope my story gives you some comfort. Truth may take time to emerge, but it has a way of finding the light eventually. Have you ever had to forgive someone who deeply betrayed your trust? How did you navigate that difficult journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might need to hear that healing is possible even after the deepest betrayals. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the family we choose is as important as the family we're born into.